The needletail sliced through the inky blackness, a sleek shadow against the pre-dawn sky. Inside Hangar 7 of the SPY, the air hummed with a nervous energy that crackled around the team. Jane, Agent Capricorn, adjusted her blonde ponytail, her blue eyes scanning the faces of her teammates. Beside her, Lizzie, Agent Leo, bounced on the balls of her feet, her red hair a fiery halo in the dim light. Elise, Agent Draco, stood calmly, her brown eyes focused, a small smile playing on her lips. 5. Their stoic boss stood before them, his brown hair neatly slicked back. "All right, Team Chimera," he began, his voice a low rumble. "The mission is simple. Infiltrate the facility. Identify the acid smuggling operation. Neutralize the threat. And get out alive." Lizzie snorted. "Sounds easy enough, boss." 5 raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "Don't get cocky, Leo. This facility is heavily guarded. We're going in blind. We don't know the layout, the security, or the number of personnel. This is a high-risk operation." "We're used to high risk," Jane said, her voice steady. "Indeed," 5 agreed. "Doc, you're on medical support. Tom, you're our eyes and ears, providing intel and hacking capabilities from the needletail. Team Chimera, you're the tip of the spear." Doc, the Australian medic, gave a thumbs up from his station, his usual cheerful demeanor present. Tom, the computer genius, sat in his wheelchair, his fingers already flying across the keyboard, his brow furrowed in concentration. The mission briefing had been intense, but the real tension had started earlier, when Jane had picked up the lost phone. The moment she touched it, Lizzie had been on her, practically yelling at her to put it down. "Don't answer it, Jane. You know how this works. It's a trap." Jane, ever the pragmatist, had already been considering the possibilities. It could be a lead, Lizzie, a way in. Lizzie, however, was not swayed. "It's a distraction. They want us to make a mistake." In the end, Lizzie had relented, but not without providing her voice modifier. Jane had loaded the voice template of the voicemail onto the device, and then, with a deep breath, spoken into it. The voice that came out was a perfect imitation of the facility worker, a chilling reminder of the danger they were about to face. Now, as the needletail approached the facility, the tension in the cockpit was palpable. Jane glanced at Lizzie, who was staring out the window, her jaw clenched. Lizzie was always the most volatile, the most prone to taking risks, but she was also the most fiercely loyal, the one who would always have your back. "Ready, Leo?" Jane asked, her voice soft. Lizzie turned, her eyes meeting Jane's. A flicker of something unreadable passed across her face before she gave a curt nod. "Born ready, Capricorn." The needletail descended, its landing gear extending as it approached the facility. The facility was a sprawling complex, a maze of metal and concrete, with a single, heavily guarded entrance. "All right, team," 5 said, his voice crackling over the comms. "Let's make this quick and clean." The needletail landed smoothly, and the ramp lowered with a hiss. Team Chimera moved out, their movements precise and coordinated. Jane led the way, her hand resting on the grip of her sidearm. Lizzie followed close behind, her eyes scanning the surroundings, her hand never straying far from the flamethrower strapped to her back. Elise brought up the rear, her expression calm, her movements fluid. They moved through the facility, the air thick with the smell of chemicals and the low hum of machinery. They encountered guards, but they were quickly and efficiently neutralized. Jane, Lizzie, and Elise worked together seamlessly, their skills honed by countless missions. As they moved deeper into the facility, they found the acid smuggling operation. Barrels of the corrosive liquid were stacked high, ready to be shipped out. The workers were a motley crew, their faces grim, their movements hurried. "This is it," 5 said over the comms. "Take them down." The battle was swift and brutal. Jane, Lizzie, and Elise moved with deadly precision, taking down the guards with a combination of skill and strategy. Lizzie, in her element, unleashed a torrent of fire, incinerating anything that stood in her way. Elise, with her knowledge of martial arts, took down the guards with swift and precise strikes. Jane, with her calm demeanor, took down the guards with her sidearm. As the battle raged, Jane noticed a figure in the shadows, watching them. It was a man, his face obscured by a hood. He was holding a phone, and he was clearly trying to make a call. "5, we have a problem," Jane yelled into the comms. "There's someone trying to call for backup. Take him down," 5 barked. Jane moved towards the man, her gun raised. But before she could reach him, he disappeared into the maze of corridors. "Damn it," Jane cursed. The battle ended quickly, with the remaining guards subdued. The facility was secured. "Mission accomplished," 5 said, his voice filled with satisfaction. "Now, let's get out of here." As they were preparing to leave, Lizzie approached Tom, who was still in the needletail, monitoring the situation. "Tommy," she said, her voice softer than usual. "You okay?" Tom looked up at her, his eyes meeting hers. A small smile played on his lips. "Yeah, I'm fine, Lizzie. Just a little tired." Lizzie's cheeks flushed slightly. "Good. Just good." She turned to leave, but then paused. "Hey, Tommy? Yeah? Be careful, okay?" Tom's smile widened. "Always am, Lizzie. Always am." As the needletail lifted off, Jane watched Lizzie, who was staring out the window, her expression unreadable. Jane knew that Lizzie had a soft spot for Tom, a secret crush that she tried to hide. Jane also knew that Lizzie was fiercely protective of her friends, and that she would do anything to keep them safe. Back at the SPY, the team gathered in the debriefing room. 5 praised their performance, highlighting their efficiency and teamwork. "Excellent work, Team Chimera," he said. "You handled the situation with skill and precision. The acid smuggling operation has been shut down, and the threat has been neutralized." "What about the guy with the phone?" Jane asked. "Did you manage to trace the call?" 5 shook his head. "No. The call was routed through multiple servers. We lost the signal." "So, we don't know who he was calling?" "No," 5 replied. "But we'll find out. We always do." As the meeting ended, Jane found herself alone with Lizzie. "You okay?" Jane asked. Lizzie shrugged. "Yeah, just tired." "You were amazing out there," Jane said. "You were like a force of nature." Lizzie gave a small smile. "Thanks, Capricorn. You weren't so bad yourself." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the mission still hanging in the air. "Hey, Lizzie," Jane said, her voice hesitant. "About Tom." Lizzie's eyes narrowed. "What about him?" I know you like him," Jane said. "And I just wanted to say, he's a good guy. He cares about you." Lizzie's expression softened. "I know," she whispered. "And I care about him too." She looked away, her cheeks flushed. "It's just complicated." "I know," Jane said. "But don't let it stop you." Lizzie looked back at Jane, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear. "Maybe you're right," she said. "Maybe I won't." The next few weeks were a blur of training, missions, and the usual chaos of life at the SPY. Jane and Lizzie continued to work together, their bond strengthened by their shared experiences. They were a team, a family, bound by loyalty and a shared sense of purpose. One evening, Jane found Lizzie in the training room, practicing with her flamethrower. The room was filled with the smell of burnt rubber and the sound of sizzling metal. "Still at it, huh?" Jane said, leaning against the doorway. Lizzie turned, her face flushed with exertion. "Gotta stay sharp, Capricorn." "You're already the sharpest," Jane said, smiling. Lizzie grinned. "Thanks, but there's always room for improvement." She lowered the flamethrower, her eyes meeting Jane's. "So, what brings you here?" "Just wanted to check on you," Jane said. "Make sure you're not burning down the place." Lizzie laughed. "Wouldn't dream of it." They stood in silence for a moment. the air thick with unspoken words. "Hey, Lizzie," Jane said, her voice hesitant. "Have you talked to Tom lately?" Lizzie's expression softened. "Yeah, we've been talking."